In Asheville, North Carolina, winter mornings arrive quietly. The streets are still damp from the night, and a thin mist lingers over the trees near the small veterinary clinic on Maple Street.
Let's get you inside.
Dr. Harper had just unlocked the front door, as he did every weekday before the town fully woke up. He preferred the early hours, the calm before appointments, the quiet hum of lights turning on, the steady routine that gave shape to his days. He was about to step back inside when he noticed her. A young German Shepherd sat on the top step. She looked about 6 months old. Long legs still slightly too big for her body, adolescent build, upright ears alert but not rigid. Her black and tan coat was clean but damp along the belly and paws, as if she had spent the night outdoors. She wasn't barking, she wasn't pacing. She was simply sitting there, watching the clinic door with a level of focus that felt deliberate. Beside her lay a worn fabric bag. The strap of the bag was looped gently in her mouth. She wasn't chewing it or shaking it. She was holding it carefully, almost respectfully, as if it belonged to something important. When Dr. Harper shifted his weight on the step, the puppy stood up immediately, not in aggression, in readiness. Her body moved between him and the bag without hesitation. Her eyes were steady, serious in a way that didn't match her age. One of the assistants arrived a few minutes later and paused when she saw the scene. "Stray?" she asked quietly. Dr. Harper didn't answer right away. They brought out a bowl of fresh water and set it a few feet away. The puppy glanced at it, but didn't move. They tried placing a small handful of food near the bag. She ignored it completely. Her priority was clear. Dr. Harper crouched down slowly, keeping distance so he wouldn't intimidate her. "It's all right," he said in the calm tone he used with frightened animals. The puppy didn't approach him, but she didn't leave either. Instead, she adjusted her grip on the strap and pulled the bag forward a few inches toward him. Then she stopped. The movement wasn't random, it was intentional. She looked from the bag back to Dr. Harper, holding his gaze as if waiting for him to understand something unspoken. No collar circled her neck. No tag gave her a name. There were no visible injuries. She didn't look starving. She looked determined. Cars began to pass on the street. The town was waking up. But the young German Shepherd stayed where she was, guarding the bag, watching the door. She wasn't asking for food. She wasn't asking for shelter. She was asking for something else. And whatever it was, she had chosen this clinic for a reason. The question wasn't whether she needed help. The question was what she was trying to show them, and why she wouldn't let go of that bag. By mid-morning, the clinic had filled with its usual rhythm. Doors opening and closing, quiet conversations at the reception desk, the soft sounds of animals waiting their turn. Yet outside, the young German Shepherd remained on the steps, as if time had stopped just for her. She had not moved far. The worn fabric bag still lay beside her, the strap held gently but firmly between her teeth. If someone walked too close, she stood immediately, placing herself between the person and the bag. She never growled. She never barked. But her posture made it clear. This was not something she would surrender. Dr. Harper tried again. He stepped outside with another bowl of water and placed it slightly closer this time. The puppy lowered her head and took a few careful sips, never releasing the strap completely. When she finished, she returned to her position beside the bag as if nothing else mattered. One of the assistants crouched down slowly, extending a hand toward the bag. The puppy reacted instantly. She did not snap. She did not lunge. She simply shifted her body forward, blocking the hand, eyes focused and unblinking. The assistant froze. "She's guarding it," the assistant whispered. Dr. Harper watched closely. This was not ordinary possessiveness. The puppy's movements were controlled, almost practiced. She wasn't protecting it out of fear. She was protecting it with purpose. Throughout the day, people came and went. Some stopped to stare, others assumed she was waiting for an owner. A few offered sympathetic smiles. But the puppy never looked at them for long. Her attention remained fixed on one person, Dr. Harper. Every time he stepped outside, she adjusted slightly, as if ready. Then, in the early afternoon, she did something different. She stood up, tugged the bag forward, and took 3 small steps toward the edge of the parking lot. Then she stopped and turned her head back toward him. It was not random movement. It was invitation. Dr. Harper felt a flicker of unease mixed with curiosity. He had a full schedule, responsibilities, patients who needed him, and yet the look in the puppy's eyes carried a quiet urgency that refused to be ignored. He stayed where he was. The puppy waited. After a long pause, she slowly returned to her original spot by the door and lay down again, placing her paw over the bag as if sealing it in place. She would wait, and she would try again. Whatever she had come for, she was not leaving without it. By the third morning, the young German shepherd was back before the clinic lights were even fully on. Dr. Harper saw her through the glass door as he unlocked it. She was sitting exactly where she had been the day before, straight-backed, steady, the worn fabric bag resting against her front paws. This time, there was no hesitation in her posture. She looked like she had decided something. The air was colder that morning. A thin layer of frost covered the edges of the steps, but she didn't seem to notice. When he stepped outside, she rose immediately, tail low but not tucked, ears forward. She pulled the bag toward him again. Not aggressively, not desperately, just with quiet insistence. Dr. Harper glanced down at it more carefully than before. The fabric was damp and stained in places. One corner was frayed. It wasn't new, but it wasn't torn apart either. Whatever was inside gave it weight, not heavy enough to drag the ground completely, but enough that the puppy had to lean her body slightly when she moved it. He crouched down again, lowering himself to her level. "It's just a bag," he said softly, more to himself than to her. But it didn't feel like just a bag. He slowly extended his hand, not toward the strap in her mouth, but toward the side of the fabric. The puppy stiffened instantly. She didn't snap. She didn't show her teeth. She simply tightened her grip and stepped back half a pace, eyes locked on his. Clear message. One of the assistants stepped outside behind him. "She's been here 3 days," she said quietly. "Maybe someone abandoned her." Dr. Harper nodded slightly, but something about the puppy's behavior didn't match abandonment. She wasn't lost. She wasn't wandering. She had chosen this place. Suddenly, she tugged the bag forward and took several deliberate steps toward the edge of the parking lot, farther than before. Then she stopped again and turned her head back, waiting. Her body wasn't restless. It was focused. Dr. Harper felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing against his curiosity. He had appointments scheduled, animals inside that depended on him. He couldn't just follow a stray puppy into the woods without reason. And yet, the puppy stood there, eyes steady, as if she knew he was the one who had to understand. After a long moment, he shook his head gently. "Not now," he murmured. The puppy didn't protest. She returned to the clinic steps once more, lay down beside the bag, and placed her chin across it. She would wait again. And the question only grew heavier. How long had she been trying before someone finally followed her? On the fourth day, something changed. Dr. Harper had barely finished reviewing the morning schedule when one of the assistants said quietly, "She's here again." He didn't need to ask who. The young German shepherd was no longer sitting directly at the door. Instead, she stood several steps away, closer to the edge of the parking lot. The fabric bag rested beside her paws, but this time she wasn't lying down with it. She was standing, alert, waiting. When Dr. Harper stepped outside, she didn't hesitate. She picked up the strap and began walking, not running, not dragging wildly, walking with steady purpose toward the far end of the lot where the pavement met a thin strip of trees. Halfway there, she stopped and looked back. The look wasn't anxious. It was checking. Dr. Harper felt it clearly now. This wasn't random behavior. She wasn't wandering. She was leading. He glanced back at the clinic door. Inside, the morning rush had not yet begun. He had a narrow window before the first appointments, just enough time to see where she was trying to go, not enough time to lose control of the day. 10 minutes, he told himself quietly. He took a slow step forward. The puppy's ears lifted slightly. She continued walking. They crossed the edge of the parking lot and stepped onto a narrow dirt path leading toward the wooded area behind the clinic. Fallen leaves covered the ground, still damp from the night. The bag brushed softly against the earth as she pulled it along. Every few steps, she turned her head to make sure he was still there. Dr. Harper kept a careful distance. His heart beat a little faster. Not from fear exactly, but from uncertainty. He didn't know what he expected to find. An abandoned campsite? A hidden shelter? Nothing at all? The trees thickened slightly, blocking out some of the morning light. The puppy slowed. Then she stopped completely. She stood still for a moment, listening. And then, without looking back this time, she turned slightly to the right and moved toward a cluster of fallen branches. Dr. Harper followed. Whatever this was, it was no longer about curiosity. It was about something waiting ahead. Dr. Harper stepped carefully over the fallen branches, pushing aside a thin limb that blocked his view. The air beneath the trees felt colder, heavier somehow. The young German shepherd stopped beside a patch of flattened leaves and lowered the bag to the ground for the first time. She didn't release it completely. She just let it rest there. Then she looked toward the base of a fallen tree. At first, Dr. Harper saw nothing but shadow. Then his eyes adjusted. There, partially hidden beneath the curve of the trunk, lay another German shepherd. About the same age, 6 months, maybe slightly smaller in build. Her coat was the same black and tan pattern, but duller, thinner. She was lying on her side, ribs faintly visible beneath her fur. When she tried to lift her head, it rose only halfway before settling back down. She was conscious, but weak. Dr. Harper knelt slowly, speaking in a low, steady tone. "It's all right. Easy." The second puppy's eyes moved toward him, not fearful, just tired. The first puppy stepped forward and lay down beside her, touching her nose gently to the other's cheek. A brief, quiet contact. No panic, no frantic movement, just confirmation. I brought help. Dr. Harper felt a tightness in his chest. The situation was clear. The second puppy hadn't been injured severely. There was no visible trauma, no bleeding, but she was dehydrated, undernourished, exhausted. She had likely been there for days. He slid one hand carefully beneath her chest and the other beneath her hind legs. She was lighter than she should have been for her age. When he lifted her, she didn't resist. She only let out a faint breath, almost a sigh. The first puppy immediately stood up, grabbing the strap of the bag again. Even now. Dr. Harper glanced at it. There was no time to open it, not here. "Okay," he murmured quietly. "We're going back." He carried the weakened puppy carefully through the trees. The first one walked beside him, steady, focused, dragging the bag along the path with quiet determination. When they reached the edge of the parking lot, the clinic door seemed closer than it ever had before. Whatever had brought the first puppy there, it had worked. And now, the real work would begin. Inside the clinic, everything shifted into quiet urgency. Dr. Harper laid the weakened German shepherd on a soft blanket in the treatment room. The lights were bright but calm, the movements around her controlled and gentle. No rushing, no raised voices. The second puppy tried to lift her head again, but managed only a small motion before settling. Her breathing was steady, though shallow. When Dr. Harper touched her side, he could feel how light she was, too light for a 6-month-old shepherd. "She's dehydrated," he said softly to his assistant, "and she hasn't eaten properly in a while." They worked carefully, small amounts of water at first, then a mild nutrient mixture. Slow, patient steps. The goal wasn't speed, it was stability. The first puppy stood just outside the treatment area, the fabric bag still near her paws. She didn't bark or whine. She simply watched. When the weakened puppy stirred slightly, the first one stepped closer, lowering her head as if to reassure her. It was subtle, a quiet presence rather than frantic concern. Dr. Harper noticed something else. The first puppy wasn't asking for attention now. She wasn't pulling at the bag. She wasn't trying to lead him anywhere. She had completed her task. He moved toward her slowly and for the first time, gently touched her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Instead, she relaxed under his hand just slightly, as if the tension she had carried for days had begun to ease. Later that afternoon, the second puppy managed to stand for a few seconds with assistance. Her legs trembled, but she stayed upright long enough to take a few small steps. The first puppy followed beside her, matching her pace exactly, never pushing ahead. The bag remained untouched in the corner of the room. No one had opened it. There would be time for that later, if it mattered at all. For now, both 6-month-old German shepherds were inside, warm, safe, and breathing easier than they had in days. And the clinic felt different, not busier, just fuller. By the end of the week, the clinic had adjusted to having 2 young German shepherds moving quietly through its rooms. The second puppy was stronger now. She could walk on her own, slowly but steadily. Her coat had begun to regain its shine, and her eyes no longer carried that distant exhaustion. She stayed close to the walls at first, as if unsure how much space she was allowed to take. The first puppy, the one who had carried the bag, stayed beside her almost constantly. If the second one paused, she paused. If she lay down nearby. There was no competition between them, no pushing or restless energy, just quiet coordination. Dr. Harper watched this with growing understanding. They were not simply two strays who happened to meet in the woods. They belonged to the same story. One afternoon, when the treatment room was empty, he finally approached the fabric bag. The first puppy noticed immediately. She lifted her head but did not rise. Her ears angled forward, alert but not defensive. Dr. Harper crouched beside the bag. "It's okay," he murmured. Slowly, he placed his hand on the damp fabric. The first puppy stood up, not blocking him this time, but standing close enough to observe. Her body was tense, yet she didn't try to stop him. He loosened the strap gently from where it lay and opened the top just slightly. Inside, he could see only shapes. A folded cloth, something metallic catching a bit of light, and what looked like a small object wrapped in fabric. Nothing dangerous, nothing obvious. He did not pull anything out. He closed it again. Whatever was inside had been important enough to carry, important enough to guard. But it had already served its purpose. The first puppy stepped forward and touched the bag briefly with her nose, then looked up at him. Not demanding, just checking. Dr. Harper stood and moved the bag closer to where the two dogs now rested together on their shared blanket. He understood something simple in that moment. The bag had not brought him answers. It had brought him responsibility. And somehow, the young shepherd had known exactly where to take it. A few more days passed, and the change in both puppies became unmistakable. The second German shepherd could now walk across the clinic without trembling. She moved carefully, but with growing confidence, her ears lifting higher each day. When Dr. Harper called softly, she looked up immediately, as if beginning to understand that his voice meant safety. The first puppy no longer guarded the bag the way she had at the beginning. It stayed near their resting spot, untouched but present, like a quiet reminder of how everything had started. The two 6-month-old shepherds rarely separated. If one stepped toward the water bowl, the other followed. If one settled onto the blanket, the other adjusted beside her. They slept back to back more often now, breathing in the same rhythm. The tension that had once defined the first puppy's posture had faded into something calmer. Relief, perhaps. Dr. Harper found himself lingering after hours. He would sit in the chair by the wall and watch them move through the space. The clinic felt different with them there. Not louder, not busier, just warmer. One evening, as the sun dipped low outside the windows, the second puppy approached him on her own for the first time. She walked slowly, stopped in front of him, and lowered her head slightly. He reached out carefully and rested his hand on her shoulder. She did not pull away. The first puppy observed from a few steps back. When she saw her companion relax under his touch, she walked over as well and leaned gently against his leg. It was a quiet moment. No dramatic music, no sudden realization, just a simple understanding settling into place. These two had come together. They had chosen this clinic, and now, without urgency or fear, they were choosing to stay. By the 9th day, the clinic no longer felt like a temporary stop for the two young German shepherds. It felt familiar to them. The second puppy had gained strength. Her steps were steady now, her ribs no longer visible beneath her coat. She moved through the rooms with quiet curiosity, sniffing corners, pausing by the window, watching cars pass outside without fear. The first puppy, the one who had carried the bag, no longer kept constant watch over it. The fabric bag remained near their blanket, slightly folded to one side. She would glance at it occasionally, sometimes touch it briefly with her nose, but she did not guard it with the same urgency. It was as if the task she had carried was complete. Dr. Harper finished his paperwork one evening and looked across the room at the two of them lying side by side. The first puppy rested her head across the other's back. The second shifted slightly closer, comfortable. He realized something he had been quietly avoiding. He had placed notices. He had informed local services. He had done what was required. No one had called. No one had come looking. The clinic could not remain their home forever. He leaned back in his chair, watching them breathe in the slow rhythm of animals who finally felt safe. The first puppy lifted her head and met his eyes. Not anxious, not urgent, simply present. He understood the look differently now. It wasn't asking him to follow anymore. It was asking what would happen next. Dr. Harper stood and walked toward the small storage room at the back of the clinic. He opened the door and looked at the unused dog beds stacked neatly against the wall. The thought had been forming for days. He returned to the treatment room and sat down on the floor near them. The second puppy approached first, placing her paw lightly on his knee. The first followed and leaned into his side. "You chose this place," he said quietly. Neither dog moved. He didn't need an answer. The decision was no longer about mystery. It was about belonging. The decision did not come with a dramatic announcement. It happened quietly, the way most important choices do. A week later, Dr. Harper drove home a little later than usual. In the back of his truck, two young German shepherds lay side by side on folded blankets. The fabric bag rested between them. They were no longer the tense, uncertain figures from the clinic steps. Their coats looked healthier, their movements confident. 6 months old, both of them, still young enough to grow into whatever life would shape for them. When he opened the door to his house, they stepped inside carefully. The first puppy paused at the threshold for a second, scanning the room the way she had once scanned the clinic door. The second followed close behind. Dr. Harper placed 2 water bowls on the kitchen floor and set down a pair of dog beds in the living room. They explored slowly, not racing through the space, not overwhelming it. The first puppy chose a spot where she could see both the hallway and the front door. The second curled down near her without hesitation. The fabric bag was placed gently beside the wall near their beds. He never opened it again. It had brought him to the forest. It had led him to the second puppy. It had done what it needed to do. Now it was simply part of their story. That evening, as the house settled into silence, the 2 shepherds lay resting together. The second one breathed deeply, fully at ease. The first lifted her head once, looked around the room, then lowered it again. For the first time, she was not waiting for something. She was home. Dr. Harper stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them. He had started the week with a mystery on his clinic steps. He ended it with 2 loyal companions in his living room. Fuck, some questions never receive full answers, but sometimes the outcome matters more than the explanation.